So today I want to talk about the golden age. I don't know if y'all realize, but the summer solstice was just yesterday. And I don't know about you guys, but I got some pretty cool affirmations. So yesterday I was given a spiritual test from my higher self, I suppose. So what happened was, of course, it was, really good vibes in the air. I was kind of really feeling everything, and we just went on this really crazy walk, and I just got affirmations left and right, like about everything that I'm supposed to do in life. My writing, my dreams of traveling and building a house bus with my husband. So everything was affirmed with the sign 111. Yeah, good affirmations. So with that being said, with just some of the positive energy in the air, I just kind of want to uplift some spirits a little bit more with some of these bad juju and all this change going on. With the golden age, there's a lot of prophetic reason for what's going on. I've kind of covered that in some of my other videos, but just a little background. Going along with Vedic Astrology, a lot of this is all prophesized, so it's really a great time to be alive, guys, because there is some really great changes coming for us in the future. Near future, far future, and yeah, you're just gonna learn some cool stuff. Kind of wanted to cover some of my predictions with everything. I mean, I believe they're kind of foreseeable for a lot of us going around with what's gonna happen, because it is the Great Awakening for a reason. So, with that being said, just keep a positive vibe and put your light out into the world, because we're really gonna need it. Things are still gonna get rocky. I definitely encourage you to try to learn how to live off the grid a little bit. I don't think things are gonna get too rocky, but I can't really predict too much. Things were kind of, you should go over an astrologist with that. Go check your horoscopes, like some like legit horoscopes. There's some pretty good YouTubers online. I'll link you to the guy that actually predicted the 2020 coronavirus situation back in like September of last year. I'll show you that in the links. Now, going along with like the golden age, some of my predictions, really, of course, where we go one, we go all. What that means is oneness. We're going towards unity. Where we go as an individual, we go along with the tribe and the vibrations of the universe as well. Now, going along with what I said with like frequencies earlier, you really want to pick up on that and realize that the vibrations that you feel and those tingly feelings when you know something's up, those things are real, and those frequencies actually get put out in the universe through media, music, television, the books you read, the video games you play, and just the, downright to the thoughts that you tell yourself. So all of that is really important. It's really vital to understand those things. Like I've kind of covered a little bit in some of like my shorter clips about shadow work. You really want to get down with some of that, negative energy and being able to clear that and, kind of block that out. I'm going to kind of cover some of that with some of the shamanism test that I was given yesterday, because I actually, like I said earlier in the video, I got a test from the universe, and part of it was actually awakening my husband. So I have foreseen that I am a shaman, and I was a shaman in a past life. We'll talk about reincarnations in a different video. With that being said, taking the shaman path, my husband's kind of had some blockage. I definitely have sensed that me and him, when me and him met, there was just this connection, this like twin flame type of thing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard twin flames. I'll probably try to cover that in a different video, talking about relationships and stuff. Now, when I say you feel it, right? So recognizing things that are in alignment is like the first step to spirituality. And I predict a lot of people to see some crazy patterns coming up. With the golden age and the prophecy of the golden age, there's the first understanding is this earth is sort of in what we call like development stage. As higher conscious learning becomes more available and becomes more of a thing that people just kind of vibe with and kind of are more attracted to with their frequency, that's going to expand very vastly in the collective. While that being said, you're going to see a boom in creativity, online work, advancements in technology that will just blow your mind in the next few years and even the next few decades. However, there are going to be some things that are also going to be revealed to us that a lot of people already knew about and kept hidden, but we'll get into that some other time. I have kind of reflected on this in some previous videos. Now, going back to some of my predictions with the Golden Age, with a better healthcare system, better technology, of course, and freer choice, freedom of choice, with education, how you want to learn, where you want to learn, and then creativity is really going to flourish. The whole unity aspect and the whole higher conscious vibe is really gonna go get the creative energy flowing. I don't know if you guys have already felt it, but I have, and I know a lot of my friends have as well. So I mean, if you're not vibing with that frequency, just kind of do some shadow work, and we'll talk about that in the next video. Do some shadow work and just align with your spiritual being, and then things will start to just come at a relaxed pace for you, and you'll start seeing things that are magical. Now, I kind of want to get into New Earth, talking about with my predictions. They're very vague, because really, where we go from here with all this freedom could really be, the sky's the limit. So, I'm not going to make any too vast a judgment, but astrology is pretty interesting, and if you want to do some future telling, I definitely encourage you to look into astrology, study it a little bit, and see what you can do, or even just talk to an astrologist and they can share their wisdom with you. With some of the Golden Age, just kind of going over some of Vedic astrology, I have a quick little clip I'll show you of some of the predictions.
What I'm going to be talking about today is Prabhupada's vision for the coming Golden Age. And let me explain why I chose that title. For those individuals who do not know who this great guru was and is, Prabhupada, you will, after this talk is over, you will understand who he is and why I have chosen to make this talk in a way about him. Kind of indirectly. Prabhupada served as the center, really, the catalyst for a spiritual revival that is happening throughout the world today. And very specifically, what he talked about among other things, was how we are about to enter a new mini golden age. And this is what I'm going to be speaking about today, but not entirely. We will lead up to that after a short time. First, I want to talk a little bit about where we find ourselves today as a world, as a planet. And where do we find ourselves? Well, we find ourselves at a time in history where our culture, our vision, our values, our purpose, our worldview is something today that is very different from what it was previously, what it was in the past, for many tens of thousands of years, up until quite recently, actually. It's interesting that when you look at the world had a certain type of, let's say, ideological, philosophical, spiritual stability to it for a very long time, where there were certain ideas, there were certain ways of living, ways of being, that were understood to simply be the norm. And they were the norm because, very simply, they created happiness. They created meaning in life. This was the case for a very, very long time, where if you look at previous cultures, and when I say previous, I'm talking about certainly pre-modern, I'm talking about pre-Enlightenment era, I'm talking about the world as it was when, at least nominally, at least in the idea, God and spirituality, the idea of a transcendent, the idea of living for a purpose beyond just ourselves, was the norm. So in the past, this was indeed the case, where the idea in pretty much every society on earth, whether we talk about grand civilizations, whether we talk about small tribes, and everything in between, the general idea is that individuals should live for something greater than just me, than just my immediate needs, than just my immediate need to have information and pick up my phone and play on my phone and become a famous celebrity on Facebook and things like this. The idea at one time was that, yes, we had to have a transcendent purpose if our life were to have meaning. Now, the thing is, of course, given all these diversities of previous cultures, they weren't all necessarily perfect. They had different ideas of what that higher purpose was, of what God was, what the transcendent was, what spirituality was. But at the very least, people had purpose. People had meaning in their lives. But what do we see today? What we see today, and especially for those of us who are a little bit older, thus we could see this rapid progression of purposelessness and meaninglessness in the lives of so many people. What we have seen is that today we live in a culture, in a modern culture, in modernity, a secular modernity, in which real purpose and personal meaning is gone. And this is pretty much the case for most individuals. Sadly, even for individuals for whom they think that's not the case for them. Very often, individuals may think that they're idealistic, and even then, truthfully, it's a self-centered sort of idealism. It isn't what I was describing before, this idea of there being a purpose outside of just my own needs and interests and desires and pleasure, etc. What we find is that we have indeed created now a global society in which certainly God is gone, but spirituality also, in the meaningful sense, is also no longer present as the center of society. The idea of a transcendent, the idea of thinking long-term, the idea of an eternal. Rather, what are the values of society today? The immediate. And not just the immediate, but again, focused almost exclusively on self, on the idea of me and my interests alone. Now, the thing is, everyone knows this. I'm not saying anything in the least bit controversial. Everybody knows this. And it almost doesn't even matter what your belief system is. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter even if you're an atheist, if you're spiritual. It doesn't matter if you're left-wing, right-wing. It doesn't matter if you're liberal, conservative. Pretty much everyone understands this, that we have indeed created, sadly, a nihilistic sort of culture today. Now, what is the result of all this? Practically speaking, the result is what we see around us, among our friends, our family, and not everyone is experiencing this necessarily, but we all, at the very least, know someone who is. And what am I talking about? What we have seen today is that people are suffering from more pain, more actual suffering, more trauma, more depression, more, again, sense of meaninglessness and nihilism. That, oh, life is just meaningless. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. See, this is the mantra today. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what I believe. Doesn't matter what I do. Nothing matters. What we've seen is that this has become the prevalent mindset of individuals today. And what is another, let's say, name for this? Suffering. People are indeed suffering today. And when I say suffering, certainly externally, certainly health-wise, people are suffering today. But what I'm talking about more than anything is internally. Internally, emotionally, mentally. One could even say spiritually. People are suffering today because they indeed are living within this great, vast, empty vacuum where, again, God has been taken away from us. Spirituality has been taken away from us. And when individuals find themselves in such a vacuum, again, they suffer. They're depressed. What is the wonderful thing, because so far this has been a little bit negative. We have to deal with the negative first before we can then go on to the positive. We have to assess, you see, where we are if we are to then know where we should be, and then what to speak of how to get to where we should be. But let's not deal just with what we all know, and that is the negative state of our world today. And sadly, it's been growing exponentially, this negative state of the world today, within the context of the Kali Yuga. What is wonderful is that, again, people understand this now. See, what's interesting is, if you had gone back, let's say 25 years ago or something like that, you would have found less people who, if I had said these things to, you would have found maybe less people who would have agreed. Let's say during the 90s, for example, when things seemed a little bit better. And you're in Croatia now, which was at one time part of Yugoslavia, which was at one time behind the so-called Iron Curtain. And I know Yugoslavia has a very different history from the rest of Eastern Europe, but still, you understand that in the 1990s, it seemed like, for many people, a time of great hope, a time of great promise. As the Iron Curtain broke down, as the internet was born, etc., etc., it seemed like, people are just going to become happier and happier now, and there's going to be more prosperity. Instead, of course, what we have seen has been the opposite. We have seen a continuing degeneration in culture. We have seen, again, more depression now than even 25 years ago. So for those of us who are a little bit older, like for myself, I'm in my 50s, so we can especially see this downward trajectory. But again, this is the positive thing. Today, everybody recognizes this. There's nobody, I have not found anyone who I can explain this to them, that, yes, now in modernity, people are nihilistic, people are unhappy, people need spirituality. I have not found anyone who would disagree with this today. And this is the thing that's wonderful, is that in itself shows precisely the fact that there is a great awakening that is happening. That people are finally starting to realize, they're asking themselves, what have we been doing as a culture, as a society? Whether it's in Croatia, or in America, or Canada, or Germany, or UK, or any place on earth, people are finally starting to ask this question. Where have we gone so wrong? And why have we gone so wrong for so long? And people are beginning to awaken. People are beginning finally to seek real alternatives to this culture of meaninglessness that we now find ourselves in. So this is the positive thing. What we are beginning to see very slowly, but surely, and actually growing very rapidly now, what we are beginning to see is that there is now a yearning for a deep life again. There is yearning for a deep life. You see, this is the thing. This has been the hallmark of the, let's say, much of the late 20th century very early part of the 21st century, people have been shallow. Culture is shallow. Spirituality has been shallow. Everything has been shallow. Instead, what do we see now? People are yearning for depth. People are yearning for authenticity in everything that they do. People want the real. They don't want the artificial. They don't want to be told by a compromised media, by compromised, corrupt politicians. They don't want to be told that, oh yes, this is your reality. People want true reality, not just an artificial reality. So what we see is that indeed, people are now turning once again to spirituality, and real spirituality, authentic spirituality. I won't go very in depth in this talk into what is authentic versus fraudulent spirituality, because I've already given several talks about this and they're available as YouTube videos where I go very in depth. But let me just say, yes, up until recently, even spirituality, unfortunately, has been rather shallow, self-centered. What can spirituality, so-called, what can it do for me? People don't want this anymore. People don't want fluffy answers that kind of give them a little bit of relief, a little bit of a feel-good sort of emotion. People want true authenticity today. I personally, let me tell you, I have been in the center of all this as a witness. I have experienced now hundreds and thousands of individuals who truly want authenticity in their life, not shallow answers. I have people who now in the last year or so have been coming to me and they will literally say to me, Acharyaji, this is what I've been searching for and this is what I need. I want the truth. I don't want to just feel good. I don't want someone to tell me something in the form of some sort of spirituality that just sounds nice, but it's not real. It's not true. It's not based on something that is eternal, that is truly philosophical. I want the truth, no matter what. This is what people are telling me now. And this in itself is a hallmark that, yes, there is a great awakening that's happening. So we are in a very important, very special place now in history. Now, the center of all this is indeed what is called Sanatana Dharma. Because again, you remember how previously I was talking about how, at one time, regardless of the culture that you looked at, regardless of the civilization, the nation, the tribe, hundreds and thousands of years ago, spirituality was the center of all things. Seeking, again, the authentic, the real, was the center of almost every culture on earth at one time. And as a result, the people of those various nations, tribes, groups, etc., they all had some form of purpose and meaning in their lives. Well, if you go back far enough, the central motif, the central philosophical spiritual motif of all these truly ancient cultures is what we call Sanatana Dharma, which is something that transcends sectarianism. As Prabhupada always said, we're not simply sectarian oriented. It's something that transcends denominationalism. Rather, Sanatana Dharma, as I've translated it, which I feel is the most accurate translation, is the eternal natural way. Following the natural way, following the natural law that was set in place by God Himself in order to help us have meaning in our lives, have value and virtue in our lives as living beings, to live in accordance with nature's principles, and to come eventually to know God Himself personally and intimately through devotion. This is what is known as Sanatana Dharma. And this was the spiritual foundation of all past ancient civilizations, and as a result, it shouldn't be surprising to people that with this new global restoration of meaning and purpose and spirituality that is happening in the world today, it is indeed Sanatana Dharma that is the tip of the spear. It is Sanatana Dharma, more than anything, that is at the very forefront of bringing about this new restoration of spirituality to our world today. So, before I go on, I want to pause there for a second and explain what is meant by Sanatana Dharma and why this is indeed the case. That what is bringing about this new spiritual, one could say global spiritual revolution in the world, that it is indeed Sanatana Dharma. Well, first, what is Sanatana Dharma? And I'll talk about this very, very briefly. Because again, we have over 100 videos where I talk about what is Sanatana Dharma in various aspects, very, very in-depth. So I don't want to take up too much of people's time when you can just watch those videos or read our books. But there are several elements that I want to talk about. First of all, there is the concept of Dharma itself. The concept of Dharma, interestingly, is the most important philosophical concept in the history of humanity. And it's amazing how people lost sight of this fact. And it's only been recently, in the last maybe several years, that now people are finally beginning to use this word again. It's because of, honestly, a campaign that I personally started around 1988 to explain to people exactly what is meant by this very ancient term that they had forgotten. Interestingly, even in the Vedic and Hindu world, even though this word dharma is central to our principles, it's a word that was very much neglected up until recently, until I personally began this teaching campaign around 1988, where I began to explain that if you are Vedic, you must understand what is meant by dharma. It's not just some side idea. Rather, dharma is central to our understanding of the world. And this essentially is what dharma means in the smallest nutshell. That again, when we look at nature, when I say when we look at nature, I don't mean merely when we quite literally see nature through our eyes and through our empirical senses. I'm not talking about simply going into nature and looking at the trees. I'm talking about something subtler than this, more meaningful than this. And that is when we allow that which is behind the empirical fact of nature to speak to our soul and to speak to our rational mind. What do we see? We see that nature itself is ordered. That nature itself, even though, again, to the physical eye, sometimes it can seem a little bit chaotic. Oh, a tree grows there, something grows there, various things happen in the universe. What we see is that actually there's principle behind everything. There are laws of nature that are there that govern not just the physical aspect of nature, not just physics, but metaphysics, that also govern us as well. There are inherent laws, principles that are there in nature, which if we understand them, and if we ourselves try to apply them to our lives, and try to follow these laws of nature, we have happiness. We have harmony within ourselves. We have harmony between ourselves and all that which is around us. And then finally, we have harmony between ourselves and that which is our source, what is called God. This is the idea in the smallest nutshell of what is dharma. So this is one of the important foundations of Sanatana Dharma. Another one is philosophical, and that is that we have the ability to understand the nature of ourselves, the nature of our world, the nature of the absolute, of that which is our source, and the relationship between all three of these things in a reasonable and rational way. See, this is what's interesting, is that unfortunately today, again, in modernity, in 2019, almost 2020, in just a few months, what do we tend to find among people who have quote-unquote belief systems? Well, they tend to veer, unfortunately, between two extreme poles. Either on the one hand, they are individuals who believe that there is no such thing as truth, that truth is something that is alterable, that truth is something that is subjective, that essentially, because we all have different opinions, therefore we all have our own truths, which there is no logical, that is not a logical conclusion to come to. But essentially you have those individuals who say that, oh, truth is not really something that you can really grasp fully. That's one pole. On the complete other side, what we see are individuals who are blind fanatics. We see fundamentalists. We see fanatics of every stripe, whether political fanatics, religious fanatics. We have individuals who they have their dogma and they believe in it, and it doesn't matter if it's not rational. They have blind faith in that. So what we tend to see today is, again, one pole versus another pole. Well, what Sanatana Dharma offers philosophically is a rejection of both poles. And rather the idea that, no, there is indeed truth. Truth is indeed absolute. Truth is indeed objective. Truth is indeed something that is knowable, but it's not a matter of blindly believing simply some doctrine. It is a matter of truth is something which, if it is indeed true, it can withstand our intellectual pursuit of it, and an open intellectual pursuit of that truth. So again, this is what Sanatana Dharma offers. It offers, yes, a teaching that is the most ancient teaching on earth, but at the same time, something that is truly philosophical in the full meaning of that term. That is, rational, intellectual, something that can be discussed, and something that can be explained through reason. And a rejection of both of those poles. There are several other elements of Sanatana Dharma that are crucial. Because in addition to the philosophical, there's also practice. You see, if a person wishes to be truly spiritual, being a philosopher is not enough. Being an intellectual is not enough. And this is something that Sanatana Dharma also teaches us, that if we are to be truly spiritual, what we need is a perfect coming together of the philosophical, but also practice as well. Spirituality is something, in other words, that is meant to be lived, not just thought. It's not just an idea. It's not just something to be debated. It's not simply a matter of, oh, let's do a comparison of religio-philosophical ideas and concepts. No, spirituality is something to be lived. Indeed, how do you know if an individual is truly spiritual? It's not merely by what they say. It's by what they do. And in fact, let me give you the greatest of secrets. Truthfully, it's not even a matter merely of what they do. It's a matter of what they are. This is how you truly know if an individual is truly spiritual, especially a spiritually advanced being. So this is something also that Sanatana Dharma provides us. It provides us a practical path that we can follow in order to, again, not just think our way to truth, but to manifest that truth in a living, experiential way in our own lives. Thus, what do we have in Sanatana Dharma, in the Vedic way? Well, we have meditation, we have yoga, we have sadhana, what is called sadhana. And these are the various spiritual practices that have been carried down to us for generation upon generation upon generation, which if we follow these practices, we can begin to quite literally in our own lives experience the divine. Experience who we are as Atman, as eternal souls, but also to then experience God in a very direct way. And this is the ultimate goal, and this is something else that Sanatana Dharma provides us.
Now, with that being said, I don't know if you've heard the whole term where we go one, we go all. That goes along with the tablets of thought, the teachings of Ra, and the law of oneness, and the laws of the universe, and the vibrational frequencies that surround us, and how we attract those vibrations, and how we put those vibrations back out into the world. Now, in order to really recognize the golden age and spirituality, like I said, you gotta tune in with this alignment. You gotta do your shadow work, you gotta be introspective, take some isolation, and just kind of breathe and be one with nature, and just kind of rediscover yourself in a sense, because that's gonna be some key elements with some of this planet energy going on, because we're in retrograde right now, so there's some really good opportunity to take advantage of some good energy with abundance going on and just aligning with your true destiny, because we all have, I'll just try to make this simple. I'll talk about dimensions in a different video, because we're pretty much in a sort of simulation. Now, when I say simulation, I don't mean anything scary. I mean there are different probabilities, different pathways that you can take in life. And when one door opens, another door closes. So it's just something you have to reflect on and acknowledge, is that there's going to be opportunities, and when you feel some type of frequency and vibration, I definitely encourage you to vibe with it and go on those frequencies. Now, that's going to align you to your higher purpose with the Golden Age, because we all had an awakening for a reason, right? Because we want to make this Earth a better place. Incoming new Earth. Now, with the Golden Age of abundance, there will be unity and oneness. It's almost self-explanatory, but what I'll kind of show you is a little bit of the 5D map, so we can kind of go over the Great Awakening in a little finite detail later on, and we'll break some of these elements down, because there's a lot to tell you guys. So I'm just focusing on the Golden Age and the Great Awakening right now. Like I've said in a previous video, apocalypse doesn't mean anything scary. It just means a lifting of the veil. It means a lot of things that were already kind of known about for this universe for a very long time. They're gonna be laid out for you guys as time rolls on. And some people will wake up faster than others, and it's just something you're gonna have to get used to for a little while. But just, keep doing the thing that you do for the Great Awakening, and we'll get closer and closer to the Golden Age of unity and oneness, community. And you'll see this on small scales, and I definitely encourage you to recognize it on small scales, because it will make you feel a lot better. It'll help you raise your vibrations when you pick up on other positive frequencies in the universe, and it'll help encourage you to find your alignment with the universe. Everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences, guys. Now, I'm going over some more kind of predictions for the Golden Age. There's definitely going to be a boom in spirituality. A lot of people are just going to pick up a new age type of spirituality, and it's not going to be so closed off as religions and doctrines have been. As you can see, a lot of people have been kind of irritated about some of the stuff we've been doing as a society for a very long time. So as those old doctrines dissipate and kind of change, we gotta keep in mind that change does take time, but it does happen at a pace. So in order to really focus on that positive frequency and the positive change in your life, you really gotta align with that. I'll keep saying that. Align with your spirituality. There's a lot of numbers in numerology that are going to send you signs through gematria, which I'll cover in some other videos, and just looking at the time. We all see 11:11 sometimes, right? There's some esoteric meaning in that. It's like binary code, but for the universe, right? Think of it that way, but it's a little bit more complex. Now, with the Golden Age and aligning with your creativity aspect and just kind of flourishing with that, those things will just eventually warp together, because it's one, you're feeding off of the positive vibrations in the world and the universe that they're nudging at you, so start paying attention to them, and your creativity is going to flow. And with that being said, that right there is going to start the Golden Age. Because with that creativity flowing, that isolation, that new age aspect, a lot of new things are going to happen. Hence new Earth. Now, I just want you guys to realize that with the lifting of the veil, there's still things that are going to have to come out into the public. We're going to have to address these problems, and shit's going to get real. So just keep that in mind while you're doing your own shadow work, and things will come in alignment with you and the universe and destiny for everyone else. Now, going over some ways to just kind of kickstart your creativity and your alignment. Do some, chakra meditations, do some guided meditations online, follow positive rhythms in your algorithms, or create a new account and start some new algorithms with that account, and you'll see some crazy things line up for you, even on the internet, and lots of wild possibilities. I will tell you that. I am proof of it. I went to Belize by chance. It was a random Facebook ad that said this country spoke English, and it was by the Gulf, which kind of wanted to go to the ocean anyway, so it was just perfect. And everything else was kind of aligned in perfect harmony as well. We'll get into that some other video, because I'm not going to go over this, make this about myself. This is about you guys and lining up with your own destiny. And if you guys have any questions, need any help on your alignment with the Golden Age, just hit me up. I'll give you some more resources. I'll show you some good meditation tips and how to pick up on signs. Love you guys. Have a good one.